And now, aviation weather around Alaska. Hello, on this Memorial Day, I'm meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook, May 27th, 2024. And looking at the flight weather map here, flight category maps as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday, we have a few weather systems. We have a weak area low pressure off the Panhandle. We have a colder core shallow low that's working its way eastward through the Bering Strait into eastern Russia. There's another low down here that'll be crossing the lower Bering Sea just north of the central Aleutians, then head toward the eastern Aleutians, lower portion of the Alaska Peninsula in this Tuesday-Wednesday timeframe. We do expect some areas of IFR along the northern Gulf Coast up into the Copper River Basin, Wrangell, St. Elias area. Back here, northern Panhandle, Chilkoot White passes along and north of the spine here of the Brooks Range North Slope Arctic coast through the Bering Strait IFR conditions, and then a lot of IFR out over the Bering and along the Aleutian chain. For Tuesday afternoon, we anticipate conditions to improve a bit here in the Panhandle, though still showery. Scattered showers lingering in this region. Also, we have pop-up showers, isolated thunder showers potentially here in areas of the interior. And this is going to be the case throughout the week, just with the daytime, especially later afternoon and early evening hours. We still have some IFR conditions down here across the southeast portion of the mainland along the northern Gulf Coast, western Gulf, just east there, Kodiak Island. Still IFR conditions along the Arctic coast, and then back out here covering up much of the portion, the central portion of the Bering Sea from, say, St. Matthew and St. Paul westward. For Wednesday morning, we see the IFR conditions expand again. Same areas here, though, up across Wrangell, St. Elias Mountains, Copper River Basin, down here into the western half of the Gulf, maybe perhaps Chilkoot White down here around Hyder in the southeast corner of the Panhandle, east of Ketchikan. IFR along the Arctic coast, North Slope, and then again across much of the Bering Sea, including the Aleutian chain, creeping up into the lower part of the Alaska Peninsula. For Wednesday afternoon, as typical, you get the daytime warning, ceilings rise a bit, visibilities improve. We have MVFR conditions across much of the Panhandle along the Gulf Coast, but some pockets of IFR certainly possible there, just inside of the northern Gulf and, say, the west side of the Prince William Sound. Up along areas of the Arctic coast, North Slope, still IFR conditions prevail there, and then continuing out over the lower half of the Bering Sea, north of the Aleutians. So past conditions here for Tuesday, we're going to see IFR conditions north of Anaktuvuk Pass become MVFR. Generally speaking, Anaktuvuk Pass will be MVFR, with south entrance southward flying toward the Yukon River, MVFR becoming VFR. Same thing for Atigun Pass. IFR conditions there, north entrance becoming MVFR as we go through the day on Tuesday. Generally MVFR conditions through the pass, and see conditions become VFR as you fly south of the south entrance. For Lake Clark and Merrill, generally VFR conditions are expected on Tuesday. Coming up through Rainy Pass, we expect VFR as well. Maybe MVFR there around the central Alaska Range vicinity of Windy Pass, giving way to VFR conditions in the afternoon. Further east, generally MVFR conditions will prevail at Isabel Pass on Tuesday, and farther east, generally MVFR conditions through Mentasta Pass, but you can see IFR conditions down along and south of the south entrance, at least early in the day before becoming MVFR. Tanita Pass, generally MVFR conditions for Tuesday. Same thing for Portage Pass, MVFR conditions on Tuesday. Chilkoot and White will start out with IFR conditions early in the day, giving way to MVFR, certainly later Tuesday morning and afternoon. Freezing levels at the surface dip down here below St. Matthew Island. We have that colder, low pressure system, that cold core system that's going to be drifting westward into eastern Russia. And then we find freezing levels aloft do bump upwards of generally above 4,000 feet across the interior mainland, upwards of 6,000 feet along the central eastern Arctic coast, and then falling back down around and below 2,000 feet here, southern part of the Yukon and British Columbia as you are in the mountains. Otherwise, there's no really big dome warm ridge of high pressure anywhere. And we find some pockets of moderate icing, perhaps here, Wrangell, St. Elias Mountains along the Alcan border there in the southwest corner of the Yukon Territory, especially above 6,000 feet. Above 6,000 feet, maybe southern parts of the Panhandle and some showers. And then back here, we find maybe some moderate icing above 8,000 feet there south of Kodiak Island, as well as south of the central portion of the Alaska Peninsula there in the North Pacific, and then back out through the southeast portion of the Bering Sea. Once you get above 4,000 feet, there is a cooler pocket of air aloft in that region, along with the potential for a few showers. Jet stream level winds 30,000 feet. We have a belt of winds, 120 knot jet core, generally west to east flow, south of the Gulf, well away from the Alaska Peninsula. Mainland pretty quiet across the Yukon Valley. And then we find southwest flow to 60 knots into the Seward Peninsula, turning a little more south across Point Hope and Cape Lisburne. At 9,000 feet, 700 millibars, here's a low pressure circulation that's kind of right there, eastern Aleutians, tip of the Alaska Peninsula. Does have some winds, 40, 45 knots here up along the northern part of the peninsula and along the Bristol Bay coastline. As we bring it down to 3,000 feet, we find some pockets of 30, 35 knot winds, Bristol Bay, northern parts of the peninsula, and then coming down just south of the central Aleutians. And this feature, that's an area of low pressure that could bring some moderate turbulence with it to areas along the Kuskokwim and Bristol Bay, especially where there's any points. And then down here where there's some of the gaps and mountainous terrains here extending down along the Alaska Peninsula, we could see some moderate turbulence on Tuesday, surface to 4,000 feet, and perhaps some isolated moderate turbulence briefly, at least early in the day on Tuesday, southern parts of the Panhandle, surface to 6,000 feet.